Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Main Street Media, Utah. This is Talk with Jon. Looking forward to being with you for roughly the next, I'd say, hour and a half. We're going to have a little bit shorter show than normal. Forgive me, your talk show host needs to go attend a family thing for one of my children, and need to make sure that I'm there for that. So let's get going. I am going to introduce my guest here momentarily, but first, let me give out the show mantra and the show prayer. First, the show prayer. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra. Where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. All right. I think I remembered it without even looking that time. Wait. So hopefully I'm making it consistent across the base. All right. So right now I have joining us David Pine. David Pine of the EMP Task Force. So first of all, let me give out a little bit of his bio. David T. Pine, Esquire, is a former U.S. Army Combat Arms Headquarters staff officer who was in charge of armament cooperation for the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas from 2000 to 2003. He has an MA in National Security Studies from Georgetown. He is a former president and current deputy executive director of the Task Force on National and Homeland Security. He recently served as defense and foreign policy advisor to former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. He has also co-authored the best-selling book Catastrophe Now, America's Last Chance to Avoid an EMP Disaster, and his new book, Restoring Strategic Deterrence, will be published in January of 2026. He serves as the editor of the Real War newsletter at dpine.substack.com. Now that's dpyne.substack.com, and previously served as a contributor to the National Interest. You can also go and find him. I think a great place to interact with him and find him more information on what he's thinking and what he's looking at, kind of at the up to the date moment, as it were, almost, is on X at America First Con. That's America First is spelled out and CON. All right, David, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you being here.
Hey, John, great to be with you again.
So there are a number of topics just in general that is happening in the news that I think are worth chatting about, but also I want to make sure that we cover your article or your most recent your most recent newsletter on your Substack. New Netflix movie shows U.S. is weaker and more vulnerable to a nuclear first strike than ever before. And then this is kind of like the little subheading to it. U.S. leaders have deliberately kept America vulnerable to an enemy nuclear first strike as a matter of policy, in the foolish belief that doing so will reduce the chances of the outbreak of nuclear war. Right from the get-go, that is a very provocative statement, David. So please forgive me for putting on my non-fan of yours hat. What someone who might disagree with that type of statement, what they might say is, that's a very bold statement, David. You're telling us that the leaders of our government are trying to make sure that we're open to a nuclear attack because that keeps us from being attacked? That just doesn't make sense. I know that a number of people would say out there in the audience.
Yeah, so I watched.
Let me throw in real quickly. They haven't heard about PB-60 though. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I watched House of Dynamite on its opening day, and on Netflix. This is a movie about a North Korean nuclear first strike against the U.S. Just with a single missile, and it depicts the confusion that would likely surround our nuclear decision makers, up to and including the President of the United States, as they try to find out who launched the missile. It was launched from the Sea of Irkutsk, which is borders on Russia and Japan, and they ultimately decide it must be a North Korean nuclear missile submarine, even though North Korea doesn't currently have the capability to launch, sea-launched nuclear ballistic missiles from that distance. But somehow they decide that it must be North Korea because it couldn't be China, right? China would never do anything like that. Even though they say that China is in the middle of conducting, military exercises, so which is typically the cover you would have to, launch this type of attack, or perhaps even a conventional, military invasion of Taiwan, as China, we know has been planning to do by 2027. So, we in the movie the U.S. launches a couple of ground-based interceptors from Fort Greely, Alaska, and one misfires, essentially, goes off in the wrong direction. The other one is on target, but it doesn't connect with the incoming missile. So the president's forced to make a decision as to how to respond to a nuclear missile attack on the city of Chicago. And they don't really show what his decision is. And this is full of spoilers, so cover your ears, I guess, if you don't want any spoilers. But essentially, he decides to launch a retaliatory strike. We don't know how many missiles he uses, but they show him at the end of the movie, providing the nuclear launch codes, breaking open the nuclear biscuit that he carries with him. Every president carries with him. Reading off those authentication codes, and presumably launching a nuclear retaliatory strike. And the movie is, I think it's useful. It's not as useful as The Day After. The Day After famously turned Reagan from a cold warrior to more of someone who wanted to see nuclear weapons maybe abolished, or at least achieve peace with the Soviet Union. With he didn't know it at the time, but Gorbachev was likely already planning the collapse of the Soviet Union, but he wanted to have the assurances from Reagan and Bush that the U.S. would not take advantage of that collapse by expanding NATO eastward. Reagan and Bush, I think, were sincere in keeping that commitment, but Clinton and other presidents, up to and including President Trump himself, have reneged on that commitment from the U.S. and expanding NATO eastward all the way to the borders of the Russian Federation. I used to work with Missile Defense Agency from 2003 to 2005. I participated in a missile defense war game involving a North Korean nuclear strike, in which the U.S. was, successful in intercepting those missiles with, SM-3 Block 2A's missile defense interceptors launched from our Aegis cruisers and destroyers. But there's no guarantee that would happen. And our missile defense capabilities, we have 250 times less missile defense interceptors than the Russian Federation. So there's just a huge capabilities gap where Russia and China have thousands of ABMs defending their homelands, but the U.S. only has 44. And further to the point of the subtitle that you mentioned in my article, in March of 2023, General Van Herk, then serving as commander of U.S. Northern Command, stated that It is that the U.S. policy is not to defend the U.S. from either Russian or Chinese nuclear ballistic missile attacks. So the rationale from that is crazy. It's because of something called mutual assured destruction, which is a theory dreamed up by Robert Strange McNamara, former Secretary of Defense in or around 1963. He served as JFK's and LBJ's defense secretary. And he came up with a theory that if the U.S. and the Soviet Union simply kept each other's countries as vulnerable as possible to missile attack, then neither side would dare strike the other. The problem is the Russians have never subscribed to that foolish Western theory, and they have built up a massive national defense system consisting of at least before the war in Ukraine erupted, 10,000 to 12,000 dual-use S-400 and S-500 principally ABM interceptors, as well as another 100 dedicated strategic ABMs around the Moscow region. So, if one side is protected, it's kind of like going into battle. Two knights going into battle, one carrying a shield. Both have lances, but the Russian side has a shield and we don't. Who's going to win? It's pretty obvious who's going to win a nuclear war, and it's not going to be the U.S.
Okay, so I've got a number of thoughts that come from that. And also, I was just talking to someone that I consider a friend, is a radio host on another network, and he and I kick back stuff on a regular basis. And his statement to me was, I don't think China is going to the war. China doesn't want war with the United States. And I'm like, I was, the first time he told me this was probably, I don't know, 3 years ago. And I was so baffled by it. I mean, I was just like blown away. I mean, this is a guy that's like pretty much thinks, I would say he and I are in agreement on like 90% of the issues. Maybe 80%, but where the biggest difference for us is how do we handle the issues that we agree upon? Does that make sense? So we both agree that it's opinion. We shouldn't let people in the country, blah, blah, blah. I mean, but it's how do we handle the things we agree on? What is the way we solve that problem? So one of his statements to me was, but that is something we disagree on. He was like, I just was blown away. I was like, it just was a record scratchy moment. I didn't even have a retort to it because of who it came from. Does that make sense? So, I've come to find that there are a few people, I would say on our side, that we would agree on most things, that also feel that same way. John, we're making too much money. The tariffs are terrible from China. We should never do it. We're going to lose. It's just going to cost us a ton of money. Having China we need to have them as partners, business partners. There's no way that they would ever attack us. Would you kind of give maybe a 2 or 3 minute statement on why you believe that it's possible? And I'm going to say to your point, I think it's more than possible. I think it's likely. I mean, very likely.
Yeah. So in 1914, Imperial Germany and Great Britain were each other's number one trading partners, and they still went to war. Britain, didn't hesitate to declare war on Germany after Germany. They hadn't invaded France yet at the time they declared war, but they had invaded neutral Belgium, which was. Britain had a treaty in 1839 that they would protect Belgium, but of course that was just a pretext. They wanted to defend France and go to war against Germany. So the idea that we can't China will never go to war with us because we're their biggest trading partner is complete garbage. They absolutely would. But it is true. I mean, your friend is correct. They would prefer not to go to war with the U.S. directly. That's been the case with Russia, with China, with Iran, Hamas. I mean, Hamas obviously attacked Israel But then they wanted peace ever since. Russia attacked Ukraine, but they the day after they started meeting, or they asked Zelensky to meet with a Russian delegation to negotiate peace. So we have all these. The irony is all these countries are enemies. They all want peace, and it's the U.S. and Western Europe really that NATO that's wanted war. They wanted the continuation of the war with Russia. But with regards to China, they have essentially a nuclear red line, and that nuclear red line is that they want Taiwan, to be united with the Chinese mainland. And many people have pointed out the fact that Taiwan has never been part of the People's Republic of China, but because in fact, it hasn't been under Chinese control for many, many years, probably for at least a century and a half. At least. And the reason that they want Taiwan is because at the end of the Chinese Civil War, Chiang Kai-shek fled with the remnants of his National Revolutionary Army, freedom fighters to Taiwan and other outlying Chinese islands to try to retain a free Chinese government. And that is essentially unfinished business from the perspective of the Chinese Communist Party. So Xi Jinping has famously declared that he's going to take back Taiwan by peace or war by 2027. That's kind of the timeline that Trump needs to work with. I think
when Xi Jinping gives a timeline, how often does he not hit his timelines?
Well, I mean, there's no other, in terms of, obviously plans and preparing the Chinese military. I mean, that China he's amassed, probably the most capable armed forces in the world. China has the most powerful military in terms of the largest army, the largest navy, the largest air force, the largest coast guard, the largest nuclear, missile capable ballistic missile force. Russia has obviously nuclear superiority over the U.S. and China, but in virtually every other area, China reigns supreme. They rule the waves all the way to the second island chain in the Western Pacific, and the U.S. U.S. leaders continue to have this imperial hubris that we're somehow the world's leading military superpower, and that's simply not the case. If it ever was, it may have been the case conventionally, certainly after the fall of the Soviet Union. It's not the case conventionally today, and it's definitely never been the case in terms of the nuclear balance, because Russia ended the Cold War with twice as many nuclear warheads as we do, and now they may have as many as 7 times more operational nuclear warheads than we do. China probably has twice as many that we do. So, we have a terrible situation.
Forgive me for interrupting here, but I want to say that I just heard Donald Trump in the last week say that we have the most nuclear missiles of any country. Is that correct? Is my memory serving me correct on that, David, that I heard Trump say that? So, okay, this is where we're going to get into a little bit of Donald Trump, and I'm going to hit a little bit of it here now. My guess is Donald Trump isn't just making that up, and I think he's being fed that information. Would you agree or disagree with that? Do you think he knows the truth?
I think he knows the truth. I think he knows that Russia has always had more nuclear weapons than we do. We know that he's one. He calls it exaggerating. It's fudging the truth, I guess. Being untruthful,
bombastic. Yes.
Bombastic. Yep. He likes to boast about things that often aren't true, and that's no exception. And I've been working on an article debunking Trump's claim that the U.S. is the number one nuclear power. And it should be published within the next day or two. I was trying to get it ready by today, but I fell short with various work responsibilities. But the bottom line is, Trump has claimed he rebuilt the U.S. nuclear arsenal in 2017 in a period of just like 5 months, essentially, of his or 6 months during his first term. And in fact, as my article will point out, he actually decreased the U.S. total megatonnage of our nuclear arsenal by as much as 20 megatons, 20 and a half megatons by my calculations, which is almost 3% of the Obama era nuclear arsenal he inherited from from his predecessors. So not only has he not rebuilt the U.S. nuclear arsenal, he's actually decreased its size unilaterally in line with all of its predecessors, though admittedly by a smaller margin than other presidents other than Biden, which ironically Biden held the line in terms of the size of our nuclear arsenal. He was the first president in U.S. history since Reagan to either hold the line, freeze the size of our nuclear arsenal or increase it.
What other points would you like to hit from your newsletter? But let me share with you just a couple questions that have popped up. So this is something that I have had people ask me when it comes to keeping treaties. So I'm synopsizing, I think, the questions that have been put to me. Should we keep commitments and treaties from 20 to 30 years ago with countries that no longer exist?
Well, the answer to that, I think, is no. And I'm not sure what treaties they're referring to. The U.S. has a record of honoring treaties that the Senate has never ratified, unfortunately. SALT II, Reagan honored SALT II, which was a disadvantageous treaty from the U.S. perspective. That was a nuclear arms control treaty. START II was also honored by all U.S. presidents prior to New START being signed by. Actually, it was the SORT Treaty. The SORT Treaty was signed by President Bush. That was a very disadvantageous treaty. And then, of course, New START by Obama. And Trump has actually came out and said, when he was running for president in 2016, he rightly denounced New START as a bad treaty, a bad deal for America. And now he's singing its praises and saying he wants to renew it because it expires in February. And it seems unlikely that, President Putin has offered a one-year extension, and Trump responded positively to that, but then he hasn't followed up since. So it does seem likely it will expire. I think it's in the U.S. interest for it to expire. I don't think it constrains the size of Russia's nuclear arsenal. Russia's building 6 different nuclear weapon systems, super nuclear weapon systems, which Putin revealed in 2018, and now nearly every single one of them is operational or near operational. All 6 have been successfully tested, including the Burevestnik, which is the NATO designated Skyfall nuclear-powered nuclear cruise missile, which had a test flight. I think it flew 14,000 kilometers. So that was a pretty great achievement on the Russian side. The U.S. at one point was trying to develop a nuclear-powered cruise missile, but it essentially spread so much radiation that we abandoned it, I think, by 1970 or thereabouts, or 71. But the Russians have successfully operationalized it. They have nuclear reactors that they've miniaturized to fit in a bus-sized vehicle, which is the Poseidon nuclear torpedo. That's the size of that. Or the Burevestnik, which probably is even smaller, or probably the same diameter as the Poseidon.
Okay, so you're saying a nuclear. So, what does it give them the capability to do?
Well, a nuclear-powered missile or torpedo essentially provides a limited range. So, in theory, they could launch the Poseidon from, let's say, Murmansk and have it hit anywhere in North or South America or Europe or Africa, pretty much anywhere in the world. With the Burevestnik, again, that's a missile that can hit, potentially be fired from, Moscow and hit anywhere in the U.S. The Burevestnik, I think, is probably the least useful of the Russia's nuclear weapon system, super weapons, because it travels at a slow speed. I think it's subsonic, similar to the Tomahawk, and they have all these hypersonic missiles, which are much more effective. But There are other systems like the Poseidon, potentially capable of destroying U.S. nuclear ballistic missile submarines from a distance as great as 50 kilometers. There's likely no way that the U.S. would be able to track a torpedo from that distance. Well, I call it a torpedo. It's really kind of an underwater missile, an underwater UAV essentially, which is
does it use propeller, or is it more like the propulsion similar to a missile?
Well, it's nuclear powered, and it's functionally similar to a torpedo. So Russia has other types of torpedoes. They have the Shkval torpedo that travels, I think, at 200 knots. Another upgraded Shkval missile that travels at 300 knots. So they're essentially rocket-powered torpedoes. This one, I'm not sure if it's also a rocket-powered torpedo. I think it is because it travels at 100 knots. Most U.S. torpedoes, conventionally armed torpedoes, travel at about 50 to 55 knots and have much more limited ranges. And the U.S. simply, we haven't successfully designed an anti-torpedo capability to be able to destroy incoming torpedoes. Our only real technique is to dodge the torpedoes through maneuver.
And if you've got a torpedo that's going 200 to 300 knots, it's hard to maneuver away from that.
Yeah. So in terms of the Shkval torpedo family that travel up to 300 knots, because they're rocket powered, they're very difficult to maneuver. So from a long distance, they can maneuver, but once they get close, if they're too far off, then they could miss. But with a Poseidon with the 100 megaton warhead, it's pretty hard to miss your target within a 50 kilometer range.
Yeah. That was kind of my thought. It's kind of like horseshoes and hand grenades, right? You don't have to hit right on the button, as it were.
Yeah.
So I want to hit a couple other of your major sections. U.S. missile defense vulnerabilities. And we don't need to cover all of these because I'd like to save some of this for the readers to go into. But I wanted to hit a couple of your major talking points. U.S. Missile defense vulnerabilities. Russia and China are ready to fight and win a nuclear war, but the U.S. is not. The insanity of MAD, we've already talked a little bit about that. Trump escalating Biden's war against Russia while warning it might lead to World War III. And those are a couple of the major sections that people can read when they subscribe to your Substack.
Yeah. So President Trump has been escalating Biden's war in Ukraine. He promised to end it in one day 53 times. He promised to end Biden's war in Ukraine within 24 hours, or even before he became president. We all knew that he couldn't do that before he became president, but certainly within the first week, he could have done it. And I provided him with a roadmap and a proposal that likely would have been accepted by the Russian Federation. And, I actually got it to a member of his national security cabinet, and I won't say who it was, but they clearly read it. And likely it didn't go any farther than that. Like President Trump likely never saw it, but at least, he had someone in his orbit that had a proposal for him that he could have used. And in fact, he almost had an agreement with Russia at the Anchorage summit. He had essentially a deal that he was trying to get Zelensky and EU leaders to accept, which they vetoed after the Anchorage summit. And he again tried to prevail on Zelensky in the White House on October 17th in a very uproarious meeting with him, acrimonious meeting in which he swore a lot at Zelensky, and rightly so, because Zelensky has always been the main obstacle to peace. He threw Zelensky's map on the floor angrily because Zelensky was trying to tell Trump that he couldn't surrender the Donbass region because that was a key defensive perimeter for Ukraine. and Trump wasn't buying it. Trump said, it's Russia has a great deal on the table. It's a good deal for Ukraine, was the quote, and very reasonable. And Zelensky, wouldn't accept it. And then, unfortunately, Trump decided to, when Zelensky wouldn't accept it, he decided to cave to Zelensky's terms and walked out of the meeting and said that Ukraine shouldn't give a square inch of territory up to Russia, even though Russia had, it was actually Trump's proposal. It was Trump's proposal that Russia accepted, and at the Anchorage meeting, and then he reneged on that because Rubio convinced him to do an about face and flip on that plan. So the war in Ukraine could have ended in August. That same plan would have likely been accepted in January. So unfortunately, all the deaths that have happened since then are on Zelensky's shoulders primarily, but Trump bears some responsibility as well.
Are there any more points you want to cover from that article, or should we jump into other topics?
We can change topics.
Okay. So I've got a number of points that I want to hit. So one of the talking points that I wanted to hit is, and one of the things that I sent out in the X post was, did Zelensky stop Trump Putin summit in October?
Well, Zelensky claims that he did, and in essence, he largely did because Trump, I think it was on March 6th, or no, not March, October 16th, he had a very productive phone call, rated 10 out of 10 with Vladimir Putin, in which Putin basically said, Ukraine's doomed. We're winning this war. We're inflicting massive casualties with few casualties of our own. And if we don't get this deal accepted, where they give up an additional 1% of their territory, we're going to roll them over and take another 4 oblasts. And Trump, I guess, basically agreed and went to, that's when he went to Zelensky and tried to, read him the riot act. And unfortunately, Trump didn't have the courage of his convictions to stick to his guns and insist that Zelensky accept the Russian, very reasonable Russian peace offer, which would have allowed Ukraine to keep a large military with almost all the weapon systems it currently deploys, with just simply evicting NATO troops from its territory and agreeing to become a neutral power, with Zelensky potentially, winning re-election by fraud if he just simply held a democratic election, because that was essentially Russia's last requirement in terms of what they call denazification, was that he would subject himself to a democratic election. And after that, Zelensky prevailed on Trump to, renounce the deal. And really, that's the whole purpose of the Budapest summit, was for Trump to essentially come to a deal, whether he signed it at the Budapest summit or not. Both the deal on the table, those were U.S. terms provided to the Russians in advance of the Anchorage summit, and the Budapest summit. The idea for the Budapest summit was from Trump, so he essentially did a 180 on both of those. And the Russians, understandably, have been very frustrated because Trump is keeps flipping and flopping, and they think they have a peace deal to end the war, and then he decides to pull it.
So my question is Zelensky playing Trump, or is someone else playing Trump? I mean, I'm just like, I want us to get out of this quagmire in Ukraine. I want us to just pull away, get away from it, get our treasure, stop going there. Heaven knows we need to keep that here within the United States. We've already got enough. So for two reasons, we've already spent enough money, way more money than we ever should have on Ukraine. That should be going to. We're increasing our deficit, our national debt, And then secondly, we're giving Ukraine a bunch of military hardware that really we should keep for ourselves. Our stockpiles, as you've shared, are extremely low. I want to say it was like less than a month. We'd have less than a month in a number of our weapon systems. Am I correct on both of those points?
Yeah, largely correct. In terms of tomahawks and long-range precision guided munitions in a naval war with China, there were two different sources, including a U.S. congressional war game conducted by Republican House members that showed that the U.S. would run out of long-range precision guided munitions within 7 days of intense combat operations with the PLA Navy. So. That would leave our ships both defenseless and unable to hit back. So they would be forced to withdraw. And those missiles can't be replenished very quickly. In the past several years, the U.S. has built on average about 200 Tomahawks a year, and we expended probably twice that many just in combat operations against Yemen and other Middle Eastern countries, including Iran, during the last year and a half. So that's just one measure, but probably in terms of a war between Russia and NATO, I think NATO would run out of weapons within the first 2 weeks, and I think you're right. The U.S. would probably run out of munitions within the first 4 weeks to a month.
So what we're doing is insanity, in my opinion. If I was Russia and China, I'd just be like, yeah, guys, keep on using up your munitions. And then China goes, I'm going to go take Taiwan now. And you guys might have some BBs that you can throw our way. You might be able to shoot it with the slingshot, but there's nothing else you can really do. Let's go to China. What China, Taiwan?
Well, let me just respond to your other question. You asked if Zelensky was playing Trump, and he absolutely is. Trump famously stated that Biden played or Zelensky played Biden as like a fiddle, but that's exactly what Zelensky's doing to Trump. So, Zelensky continues to manipulate Trump to go against his promises and his conservative base and against U.S. national security interests, much as Netanyahu has done as well.
Who else is talking to Trump, telling him listen to Zelensky, as opposed to just saying, Zelensky, sorry, little man, we're not doing this?
Well, it's primarily, no one knows for sure, but Secretary of State and interim National Security Advisor Marco Rubio has essentially been given carte blanche authority over U.S. foreign policy by President Trump. Mike Waltz, of course, was just as bad or worse than Rubio, who was his predecessor as National Security Advisor. But Trump's installed. He's listening to all the wrong people. He's downplaying the influence of J.D. Vance. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is Director of National Intelligence, and even Witkoff, who's a good friend of his. They've all tried to urge him to make peace with Russia, and he's kind of facilitated. He's on one level, he tried to get a deal with Putin, but Rubio made him condition it upon Zelensky's acceptance, which was a fool's errand, because Zelensky has a vested interest to keep this war going as long as possible to ensure that he retains dictatorial power and continues to embezzle, hundreds of millions more dollars in U.S. taxpayer funding so he can achieve his goal of being a billionaire oligarch.
Well, Zelensky, that's another thing. If I was Trump, I'd tell Trump, no more, no mas, you're done. And if I'll give you an opportunity to leave right now. You can go to some country. You've got, 2 big mansions, I believe it is, in Florida, or at least one large mansion in Florida. I may not let you move here, but you can sell it and you can go move somewhere else. But I'm just looking at NATO, and I'm looking at the United States, and I'm going, especially NATO. It seems like they're very heavily desiring to keep this going, even more so than initially Trump was. Am I right on that?
Yeah, you're right on that, and I would double down on what you just said, and I would offer Zelensky a sweetheart deal he can't refuse. I would say that we would allow him to be immune for prosecution and go into exile in the U.S. or any other Western country, with some kind of even maybe a protective detail, and I think that would be that would be a way to really get a win on the table in terms of ending the war in Ukraine. And I would offer the same thing to communist Maduro, Nicolas Maduro, dictator of Venezuela. I mean, I don't think Saddam was an enemy, but that's something that was also being considered for Saddam, as to offer him some kind of deal to go into exile with, keep a lot of his ill-gotten gains and live his life, out of power. That's really a far better alternative to fighting wars that could cost thousands of or even millions of U.S. lives. But I just wanted to say that. What was your question?
Okay, so I think it does. Let's hit Venezuela. Let's hit here, because Venezuela wasn't necessarily thinking that I was something that we were going to cover. What are your thoughts on Venezuela? Okay, first of all, in your opinion, your knowledge, military experience, do you think that Venezuela is actually has cartels, and do you think Maduro is either controlled or part of the cartels in Venezuela? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the Trump administration has used the pretext of fighting narco-terrorism. But I don't think there's any evidence that Maduro has been, at least the ships that he's sunk. There's been about, I think, 10 fast boats that he's ordered sunk with U.S. drone attacks. I don't think there's any evidence that any of those were connected to providing drugs to the U.S. Because those were short range ships. It's probably 1,000 miles at least between Key West, Florida, and the Venezuelan coast. It's just kind of laughable that the idea that those small boats could reach U.S. shores. They just simply don't have the range. Probably 100-mile range at most. So I think, I certainly think that Maduro has motivation to do the U.S. harm, but I don't think that he's heavily involved with the Mexican cartels and the drug trade like Trump claims that he is.
So what do you think the story is with those boats?
I think it's just bullying. It's posturing. We're trying to show that Trump's taking action, but really just trying to intimidate Maduro, and it's worked to a large extent. Maduro, I think it was mid-October, Maduro gave a speech, including in English, in which he said, no war, no crazy war. We want, forever peace, peace forever.
Right.
And he essentially offered a sweetheart deal to Trump, where he would agree to limit or curtail Russian and Chinese influence in Venezuela in exchange, and give the U.S. Joint ventures in Venezuelan oil, access to Venezuelan oil industries and various other rare earth minerals and whatnot in Venezuela. And if he wasn't a communist dictator, I'd be all for it. But I think Trump probably made the right decision not to take that deal, because we don't want to be in the position of helping to fund a communist government in power. But that said, he just showed that he's open to a diplomatic solution. But it's hard to see. The two sides are. Trump is so hell bent on overthrowing Maduro and has been since 2017. You can look up articles about Trump having a plan to overthrow Maduro in 2017 that he just never ended up executing. This has been an obsession of Trump's for quite some time, and for Rubio, it's even a bigger obsession. He's been wanting to do this forever.
Why do you think that is?
Well, from Rubio's perspective, I think his dad fled communist Cuba, so it's very understandable that he would want to see the overthrow of communist regimes in the Western Hemisphere. And I myself, I've been saying for years, let's pull out of Europe and Asia, and let's, if we're going to fight a war, let's fight it here at home where it actually benefits us in U.S. national security. And Venezuela hasn't been a focus, but I've been saying Cuba and Nicaragua. Or Nicaragua would be a real easy win for us. Nicaragua has the same communist dictator it had during the Reagan years and Iran-Contra. Daniel Ortega is still in power. But obviously, Cuba is still communist. Venezuela is now communist. Venezuela is probably the most, in terms of oil, it's more strategic. Cuba is more of a threat in terms of its close proximity to the U.S. Than Venezuela is. So, I think there's a greater argument to liberate Cuba. But I think that both Trump and Rubio just think that, that there's that somehow Venezuela would be an easy win. And potentially it could be because, their people are starving. And if we had shipped a massive aid, for example, we deployed U.S. military forces on the ground to neighboring Guyana, which has been threatened with Venezuelan invasion, and then had, massive food supplies, and then shipped those, started to support insurgents or, put U.S. forces in eastern Venezuela, and that created some kind of enclave, where all the people were well fed, that could make it easy for, the Venezuelan military potentially to start melting away and, wanting to, turn against the Maduro regime.
So I'm going to go. What should we do? Should we let Venezuela melt down on its own? I know that we've got, Donald Trump has said we've got the CIA there. Well, that means they're working on regime change. What should we do?
Well, I don't see Venezuela melting away on its own, and I don't want to leave the impression that I think it'd be an easy win. But what I'm trying to say is that I think if we had 100,000 troops, and if we invaded with 100,000 troops, I think we could win eventually. It wouldn't be easy, but over time we could potentially win, or even just kind of divide Venezuela between a free, eastern Venezuela and a western Venezuela, and just kind of take it off the map in terms of Russia's and China's ability to use it as a base of operations against the U.S. Through some kind of quarantine or blockade. But I don't think that's not something I would support doing before Trump ends the war in Ukraine. I've said that while I support, in theory, I support the overthrow of the Maduro regime. We can't fight multiple wars at the same time, and whether we want to admit it or not, we are essentially fighting a war against Russia and Ukraine. It's not a war in which there actually are U.S. veterans that are dying in Ukraine, and there's probably been hundreds. There was a U.S. two-star Marine Major General that reportedly was killed on the front lines, near the front lines, and he was working as a military advisor and defense contractor. So these aren't like active duty U.S. troops, although NATO officers, including generals, have been killed near the front line because they are operating in a war zone, and Russia has targeted them for assassination, and it's been successful. There was a Polish general that was killed as well. And Poland is actually the one country that has sent large numbers of volunteers. The Polish Volunteer Legion has likely sent tens of thousands of troops to fight and die in Ukraine. No other country really has. Reportedly, the French did send a French Legion regiment to fight, to deploy near the front lines in Ukraine. But I haven't heard much about that since. So other than Poland and France, there's no country that sent a large quantity of volunteers. But there are Americans that have volunteered to serve in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion that have been killed in action.
don't we have someone who took a shot at Donald Trump down in Florida that was over there in that Ukraine quagmire as well? All right. Something that I also didn't mention, hey, would be a talking point. I want to get your thoughts on Mexico. What are your thoughts there? If you've got a thought on Venezuela, I guarantee you've got thoughts on Mexico. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think you're referring to the Mexico City riot, which is essentially overthrown the first barricade of the presidential palace in Mexico City. Mexico, of course, is being ruled by a member of the Revolutionary Party of Mexico, which is essentially a Marxist party, and that is inimical to the U.S. and very closely aligned to Russia and China. Although there's no evidence of any military cooperation, they certainly are more aligned with Russia, with our enemies, than they are with the U.S. But there's been a lot of unrest and riots and violence, of course, federal troops in Mexico are protecting restoring order. But there was at least one night or more where the violence was seemed pretty bad and was very reminiscent of the Antifa BLM siege of the White House on May 30th, 2020.
Also reminds me kind of what they did in a couple of cities in Portland. I mean, you didn't get the burning, but they took control of, no, not Portland, more Seattle. Okay, so kind of the what we've been told by the press, as it were, even some of the somewhat conservative leaning press, is that in Mexico there were these just the people coming out in the streets. They are sick and tired of mayors being murdered and so forth. I want to say there's been just this year, I want to say it's been like 23 mayors have been murdered in Mexico and it's being done by the cartels, and they're upset with the federal government because their president, she is not doing enough to take care of the citizens. Your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate perception. The Mexican government, including the president of Mexico, have been working with the cartel. I mean, the cartel controls large areas of Mexico. It used to be we could travel to Mexico, anywhere in Mexico, and back in the 80s, 90s, or maybe even the 2000s, without worrying about being attacked by the cartel or kidnapped or beheaded. But
what you were worried about is the federales pulling you over and you not having enough American dollars to get out of your situation. That's what the big concern was when you were traveling in Mexico, from those that went there and shared it with me.
Yeah. It wasn't too long ago. It was back in 2020. I scheduled a trip to Acapulco for me and my wife, and I ended up canceling it after I looked up the State Department travel warning, which was, do not travel zone essentially for Acapulco, even in the tourist area, which is the same that they have for Iraq. So,
oh wow,
essentially, it's just as dangerous as a war zone, where there's insurgents and terrorists. So I ended up canceling that and lost out on the money on that, but. I mean, the cartel absolutely has a lot of power and control over Mexico, including government officials.
Well, let me share a couple other talking points that I wanted to cover with you. I definitely want to get into. Let's touch on this really quickly. I know this is a pivot, and hey, John, it's not in the news, but. Any thoughts on what's happening with Charlie Kirk, and then I want to get into America First, MTG, Thomas Massey, Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi. I want to hit those topics, but first, Charlie Kirk. Any? Do you have since? Oh, it's been couple months since he was assassinated. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, we discussed this on your program, I think a month or two ago. Charlie Kirk's assassination was, was done reportedly by a trans terrorist, essentially a 22-year-old who was gay with a relationship with his trans lover, and former USU student who was radicalized, very far left, and reportedly had. We're learning that both he and Thomas Crooks, the first Trump would-be assassin, both had a furries fetish. So we see this mental disorder. That's a new revelation that we just learned recently.
Yes, that just barely is. How about this? It's not in the mainstream media, not in the mainstream media. It's it's not in the mainstream media. But that is starting to come out. That information is starting to be shared, and I find that very interesting. Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me dive into a little further. You believing the original narrative, or do you think that there is more to it? Let me put it this way. Phil Lyman was there when the shooting happened. He was not too far off from where, in fact, he was very, very close to where that supposedly he took the shot from. But he goes, John, I don't believe that he was the actual, the one they have in jail right now is the actual shooter. Where are you at on your thoughts as far as when it comes to the Charlie Kirk assassination along those lines?
Well, there certainly have been a lot of podcasts on that topic, including by Candace Owens and others far more expert than her, that have suggested that that it may not have been possible, because we're told that the bullet didn't exit, Charlie Kirk's body, even though it was basically a 30-06, a Mauser rifle, 9mm, essentially, with high-powered rifle, high velocity rifle. That's just simply not credible. There's no bone in Charlie Kirk's body that could have stopped that bullet from going through. So that's probably my biggest question is, that story just doesn't hold water. So there clearly has been a cover-up on the part of our corrupt FBI director, Kash Patel, both on the Charlie Kirk issue and also, of course, the Epstein files. We should discuss that as well next. But I have questions about that. I do think that Israel had motive to assassinate him. I don't think we'll probably never learn anything about that, but I think it's very possible that the Mossad had agents within his Antifa Discord groups that were helping him plan the assassination and carry it out. I think it's unlikely that there was an Israeli assassin involved. But he was, essentially kind of groomed to do that. I have no proof, and I can't say for sure, but I would not be surprised if we learned at a later time that the Mossad agents were involved in trying to incite him to do that, because he did kind of have an epiphany on Israel, and he came out against the Netanyahu regime essentially. And right after October 7th, he said that this is going to lead to an Israeli attempt to ethically cleanse the Palestinians from Gaza, and it's not going to be pretty. And he also right away raised the fact that he's been, he like I have been to Israel, and it's a fortress state. It's a very militarized, controlled government. Regime is probably the wrong term, but it's a government that's very tightly controlled, and there's the security. It's just a security state. It's much worse even in the U.S., where we have the Patriot Act, and the U.S. government is weaponized against our own people. Israel is a security state. It's an apartheid government, essentially, which treats Palestinians as second-class citizens, and even Christians, don't have religious freedoms in Israel. It is a Jewish state.
You cannot proselyte, They don't let any Christians go over there and proselyte. Okay, real quickly, were you there in a military capacity, or were you over there just as a citizen from the United States?
Yeah, I worked on the U.S. Army headquarters staff from 2000 to 2003, and I went there in June 2001. Arrived. We stayed at the David Ben Gurion Hotel in Tel Aviv, which was right next to the bombed out remnants of the discotheque that was bombed at the beginning of the second Intifada earlier, 10 days earlier. So we were on restriction. There was a beautiful beach. As I looked out from probably the 50th floor, I could see the Mediterranean, and you could see parasailers, beneath, us by the beach. And I really wanted to dip my big toe in the Mediterranean, but I decided to follow orders and not do that, only to find out that other members of our Department of Defense delegation were, running around the beach, in violation of the U.S. government restrictions that we were given by the U.S. Embassy staff. But so I was there in a defense capacity, but I was not in defense.
So let me ask you this question. One thing that has been shared by Israel over the years, I've heard this multiple times, they have planes and helicopters fully loaded with either pilots on standby or actually literally in the planes and the helicopters. How long? So I go, why in the world it takes about 45 minutes for a helicopter fly from one end of Israel to the other? Why in the world why did it take them 7 hours to have the military wind up showing up as opposed to launching an attack, an Apache helicopter equivalent? Yeah. When you supposedly have them on standby, ready to go at pretty much 24/7, 365.
Well, I mean, there clearly was a stand down order, and we don't know for sure that Netanyahu gave the order, but someone in the Netanyahu government appears to have given that order because, as you've talked about, I think it took like 6.5 hours for the helicopter to arrive on scene. That should have been half an hour max, maybe 20 minutes. I'll
give him 45 minutes to an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure. Hour, I don't think I'm going to do an hour, but 45 minutes, I can. But I agree with you. So from what I asked Joel Skousen about that, and he's like, "There's no way that they should not have had." He goes, "John, it doesn't take that long to fly from one end of Israel to the other." So he goes, "There should have been helicopters on scene within no more than 30 minutes to 45 minutes." He goes, "My guess is they had when that attack started, they had pilots sitting in hell." He goes, "This is my opinion." He goes, "I don't know it for fact," but he goes, they probably had pilots in helicopters that were fully loaded and fully armored, ready to take off. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen." And he goes, "John," he goes, former F-4 Phantom pilot. He goes, "You're there on base. All of a sudden you get a phone call. They can have your plane outfit ready to go, even if we got to pull guys in." That takes 20 minutes, and then it takes another 30 minutes to get on scene. Now, but he doesn't buy it. And I've yet to speak to anybody who I really want to talk to is like the commander over the Apache squadron, and just say like. And I'm fully convinced that this is going to happen someday. We're going to have some military group, Chinese, Muslim, whatever, is going to pop up in the United States and start doing things. And we've got to have those guys activated up in the air. How long would it take? I've got that question. I'd like to ask someone that question. I'm sure they don't want to talk to me, but I would love to ask somebody that question. Your thoughts to that statement, and then I need to do a quick station break.
Yeah, I mean, Israel has essentially walled off Gaza as a concentration camp all the way since 2007. I mean, it's under air, naval, and ground blockade since, for the last 18 years, and armed guards everywhere. Strangely, they withdrew a full Israeli IDF battalion, I think, the day before. So that was very suspicious.
Interesting timing for pulling a battalion to the other side of the country.
Yeah, I mean, granted, a battalion is just 500 troops, but it was in a key area, kind of blocking, Hamas's potential entry point into Israel. So
had those 500 troops been at that point, that October 7th, as we know, it would not have happened. It would have just been a dust up, and they would not have gotten into the residential areas.
I think, potentially they could have, but it would have been much more of a firefight, and the civilian casualties would have been far, far less. It wouldn't have been 670 or 680, whatever the heck it was. It could have been maybe 100 or 200. But yeah, absolutely right. I hesitate to agree with Joel Skousen because he and I butt heads so much on issues, since he had spent 40 minutes attacking me at the Highland group on video. Of course, I posted a very extensive article to rebut all of his false claims, but he accused me of being a globalist because I went to Georgetown University for my master's in national security studies.
Well, let me put it this way. When that happened, I was like, oh my heavens. Because I'd only heard you say great things about Joel Skousen, and I'm like, okay, so can't we on our side have a few things that we disagree on, minor points?
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned it just once and said I disagree with him on one issue, and then he gave me full broadsides when he spoke the month after.
Yeah. All right. So real quickly, folks, you are listening and watching KMMU Main Street Media Utah. We are live on Rumble, X, YouTube, and our website is kmmu.org. You can call in and ask questions because we have our producer here, our lonely producer, Dwayne, is waiting. So if you so desire, you can call in with your questions at 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. Trust me, we got plenty to cover, but if we do happen to get a call, I will let you, your call will take precedence over what questions I have. So let's now go and hit MTG, Thomas. Actually, let me ask you this. MTG, Thomas Massey, and Donald Trump, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, and Epstein, where do you want to start? And we've got right around 20 minutes. We can go a little bit longer if you'd like, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I can go a little bit longer. It's up if you like. So the Epstein files, that has been, really Trump's only corruption scandal. All the fake scandals the Democrats invented, Trump-Russia collusion, that was fake. I mean, Trump has really, up to this point, has had a scandal-free couple terms. Unfortunately, the turning point, I think, was I'm not sure when it was, if it was May or July, when he did a 180 on releasing the Epstein files. When Israel told him his name was all over him, or the FBI, or whoever the heck it was. We don't know the extent to which he's implicated, whether there's any evidence of him, committing offenses with underage girls.
Here's a story that I kind of buy. I do not believe that Donald Trump did anything with underage women, underage girls. Why do I say that? Why am I like 99.9% convinced? There is no way that Kamala Harris, there's no way that the Democrats, there's no way that when they're willing to impeach him twice, there's no way that they're not going to hold back that information if it's there. If it's there to be had, I guarantee you they're going to bring it out. I guarantee you that it would be shared. So I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think there's any chance that, I don't think there's any chance that he personally did it himself. What I could see a very high likelihood is, hey, by the way, Israel had its former prime minister going over to Epstein's different homes. We've got former presidents. we've got the top people in the Republican and Democrat Party, and it's going to bring down the trust of the world. And bottom line is, yes, there's an Israeli connection, and there's all these people that would be, all their information would be shared. That's why we can't do it. So I think that's kind of my guess on why Donald Trump went, oh, well, maybe we don't share this.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think that there's no evidence that I'm aware of that Trump, had sex with underage girls as part of the Epstein sex ring. But what is likely is he likely had affairs. We know he had relationships with 20-year-olds. He had 20-year-old girlfriends when he was like in his mid 50s. I think after his second marriage, before he married Melania. That's very likely. And essentially what I've read about the Epstein, sex ring is Jeffrey Epstein would quote unquote graduate the underage girls, and then he'd pawn them off on rich friends like Trump, give them promising modeling careers or make some connections to keep them silent, basically to buy them off so they wouldn't rat him out what horrible experiences they had with him. That's possible, if not likely, that Trump did that, but that's not a crime, right? So it's, that would be embarrassing, but given that what we know about President Trump's personal life,
Donald Trump has some moral irregularities.
Yeah.
Oh, so shocking.
Right.
Donald Trump just needs to come out and say, yeah, folks, as you all know, I've had a few affairs in my life.
Yeah.
That's not breaking news.
So we have, I've heard that Steve Bannon reportedly said in 2016 or 17, actually in 2016, he said that Jeffrey Epstein, he thought, was the only one that could sink Trump's presidential chances. So it seems likely he has some kind of dirt on Trump that he didn't expose. We know that he was assassinated while Trump was president. I don't implicate Trump in that. He had a lot of enemies. It could be the Clintons. The Clintons Clintons obviously had a death list a mile long, where they killed off enemies of Bill and Hillary Clinton to keep their secrets. So that's a possibility. But Epstein made a lot of enemies. But you're absolutely right. And to answer your question, all the circumstantial evidence indicates he was an Israeli Mossad agent. He came from nowhere. He didn't graduate from college yet he became a billionaire. He was a high school math teacher without a college degree. Then he got recruited to be some kind of investor, or hedge fund, or I don't know what exactly he did in finance, but he just kept making all these powerful connections that, you would think only someone, a top CIA or Mossad asset could make. And we know that the CIA and the Mossad have kind of an incestuous relationship, and this is what his sex ring essentially reportedly is a Israeli honeypot operation where presidents and U.S. leaders, even Prince Andrew and the royal family and the British Isles, were essentially blackmailed into supporting Israel. I mean, we don't know if that's the case with Prince Andrew because he didn't really have a policy-making role, but U.S. leaders on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, have likely, from President Clinton and others, we know that there was, I think there was a list of 20 people that Thomas Massey mentioned that were referenced in the Epstein files that he had access to, including a current top U.S. government official that are implicated in the files. And Kash Patel, of course, has denied that, there's any other perpetrator, 1,000 victims, but only one perpetrator is what he claims, which is just such a huge lie and such a disgrace for someone I had really high hopes for to, clean out the corruption. Kash Patel has been a horrible disappointment. Pam Bondi's not that much better. I think if the files are released,
Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, they're both toast in my eyes. I can't trust either one of those guys because both of them were together and in my opinion, lied bold-faced to us. It doesn't make sense that a guy has as much info as as many tapes. Every single one of his rooms are have cameras in them and recording. That just makes no sense. That it's not actually a black ring. You have to be a Ben Shapiro and just go, I'm not going to buy it because it's Israel.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is Prince Andrew had his title removed as a Prince of England, because he was implicated in this. So we know there's right off the bat, we know that he was involved. We know that Bill Clinton was involved. We know there's, Republican and Democrat funding billionaires that were involved. I mean, So, I mean, Cash Patel just lost all credibility.
Probably part of that whole speech was not only all this information implicates the CIA. Well, the economy is going to crash because a number of these major business moguls are involved too, and so the economy will crash. That's another reason why I think that was able to get him to go. When it comes to Prince Andrews and why King Charles removed all of his stuff from him, my guess is he wanted. Prince Andrew was served as a sacrificial instrument in that, because Prince Charles doesn't want anybody looking into Jimmy Savile and his friendship.
Yeah, and that's very possible. And of course, Trump came out strongly. I mean, I think it was 3 days ago that he came out vociferously against Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's, you can't find a bigger Trump supporter, and he called her a traitor and a lunatic and a left-wing extremist. I mean, how ridiculous is that? I mean,
and it's all over the Epstein thing. So
it's all over Israel and the Epstein thing.
So let's hit that. To me, I'm going, all right, Trump, why are you going after Thomas Massie and going after MTG? Now, my guess is Donald Trump doesn't study and really get in and spend the 30 minutes, 50 minutes. He just gets the really short clips from whoever provides him the information in his daily briefings, right? And they give him the right clips to make those two look really bad, so he'll go after them, as opposed to reach out to Massie and to MTG and go, okay, why are you coming after me like you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous that Thomas Massie, as opposed to Trump on some big budget busting bills. So that's more logical, I guess, that Trump would oppose Massie. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, yeah, I mean, she's just been pro-Trump all along. His biggest defender during the January 6th riot. She was defending Trump. I was defending Trump. I'd never supported Trump more than during the riot, because I knew that he wasn't responsible. I knew that the whole, when I thought there was likely, federal agents, federal FBI informants that were in the crowd, and it turned out there was almost 250. After Chris Wray, former FBI director, claimed there weren't any
that we know about. I'm going to say that there was probably a lot more. When we got on the other side, I guarantee you we're going to find out there's a lot more that were involved in it than that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so Marjorie Taylor Greene. So the crazy thing is Trump did a 180. I think it was a day or two ago, and now of course the House passed almost unanimously. By a vote of there was just one Republican in opposition. All the Democrats and all the other Republicans voted to release the files. It's now going to go to the Senate. I think Thune will be pressured to grant that vote as well. And then it'll go to Trump's desk. I think he will sign it. He said he will sign it. And then he'll probably have it controlled. He'll either have a controlled leak where he redacts his name from all the emails that are released from the FBI, or else he will use the pretext that there's an active investigation of Democrats in New York because he just opened an investigation, and he could use that to have Pam Bondi said, "Sorry, we can't release any of the files because it's an active investigation." So I think that's probably the most likely thing. Is this is all the files will never get released, but they could be released with with the exception of the emails that implicate Trump. So in some embarrassing way. Not I'm not saying that he committed any criminal offenses with underage girls, but certainly we know that there are embarrassing facts that are in those files that he doesn't want to be released because he's been just ridiculously defensive. I mean, he looks so guilty. He looks the way he gets so angry, like volatile about this. And this is something that, during the campaign, he said, yeah, we're gonna release all the files. If we win, we'll release all the files. Right. So there was some kind of turn where he must have been shown some of the files that he was mentioned in, and he's like, oh, that's it. I'm not going to allow him to be released. And then he called it a Democrat hoax. And even this morning during a press conference, he called it a Democrat hoax. So despite the fact that he wants all the files released, he's still saying it's a Democrat hoax, which it just shows that he's not being forthright or honest in his desire for transparency in this administration.
So let me ask you this. Is there anything else you want to bring up about Epstein? Anything else that you want to cover about Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie? Is there anything else that you want to bring up about them? Any other thoughts before I've got kind of a wrap up question for you?
Yeah, I just want to say, I just want to heap praise on Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie and Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace. It's sad that only 4 House Republicans were willing to, out of 220, were willing to support the release of the Epstein files, and the other 216 all voted, including all 4 Utah reps, congressional reps, voted to cover. Today they voted to release them, but only after Trump gave them permission. So just the very fact that it just showed that they were doing it all for Trump. They were, they were willing to do whatever Trump wanted to do, whether it was right, for these victims or not. They were trying to obstruct justice, essentially. And, it just exposes how corrupt even a lot of conservative Republicans can be in trying to cover this up, such a massive sex scandal instead of pursuing justice for the victims.
Any last thoughts on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're both huge disappointments, both in terms of this. Kash Patel reportedly got, ordered that any foreign connections of the shooter that killed the assassin that successfully killed Charlie Kirk not be investigated. So clearly he's trying to cover up. He knows more than we say, and who would he try to cover up? Obviously, it's not an enemy country. It's not Russia, China, or Iran, or he'd be trying to expose that. It's a U.S. ally, or I don't think it's the CIA. I think the Mossad is the only country, or Ukraine, that would have motive to assassinate him, because he was also very much against the war in Ukraine, and reportedly Ukrainians celebrated his death, just like a lot of far leftists here in America.
Well, also Kash Patel's girlfriend is giving lawsuits against a number of people that are questioning Epstein and questioning the Charlie Kirk assassination, and also questioning his questions about his girlfriend. I mean, the guy's in his 40s, dating who is the head of the FBI, who is dating a 20-year-old young woman.
26, now, I think, yeah. 25, huh? 20, I think she's 25 or 26.
In her 20s, sorry, in her 20s.
20 years younger.
Yeah, so I'm going, all right, Kash Patel, and on top of that, she's a public figure, so there's people out there speculating, and they're using, I believe it's Kash Patel's want to say it was his like a former law firm, law firm that's connected to him. She is using that group to sue, give $5 million lawsuits. I'm like, I don't think you're very conservative, and I don't think you're very free speech. And it looks like when you do that, it looks like you're trying to cover things up. Okay. I want to so my wrap up question to you is, man, I want to love Donald Trump. I still think Donald Trump has been a great president, but it seems like he is just starting to backslide right now. And I'm going, Michael Yon made this statement. He goes, right now, Donald Trump is doing everything wrong. He goes, I believe he may be a controlled asset, or, and he goes, everything he is doing is wrong. Well, I'm like, Michael, not everything he's doing wrong. He shut down the borders. You agreed with that. You wanted that. So there are some things that he's done that is really well. But he's like, yeah. He goes, almost every issue that Donald Trump is coming out on now, he goes, if you go the opposite side, it's the right way to handle it. What are your thoughts about Donald Trump?
Well, I was thinking that same thing. I was thinking that he's behaving like an Israeli-controlled asset, and to a lesser extent, Ukrainian, Zelensky-controlled asset with his actions, which are go against what he campaigned on. Certainly, with Israel, he didn't make the Gaza war much of a campaign issue, although he did have a ceasefire there for 2 months that was very successful and very positive. And he since implemented another ceasefire, which is not holding, but at least it's reduced the carnage on the Palestinian side from the Israeli terror bombings. So I would agree that he is acting like a controlled asset. I certainly don't agree with Michael Yon that he's doing everything wrong. I think he's doing a lot of things right. He's done a great job on trade, immigration, other than H-1B visas, border security. I mean, he's shut down the border cold. I mean, that's probably his biggest achievement thus far, in terms of something positive. He started some new wars, started a war with Iran, a war with Yemen. So that was a violation of his promises. He's escalated the war in Ukraine. So he's definitely behaving like more of a neoconservative president than an America First president. And so that's very concerning. He's spending like a drunken sailor, trillions and trillions of dollars. The Big Beautiful Bill, the best aspects of the Big Beautiful Bill were taken out by the Senate parliamentarian. I blame John Thune for that. He could have fired her and appointed a new one, and got a much better bill with everything we want in terms of voter integrity and all the other good stuff that we had been promised. There were some aspects of the Big Beautiful Bill, and Trump has done some good things, again, mainly on trade and immigration, election integrity, trying to protect Christians from being genocided in Nigeria. Those are all positive things, but he's really militarized our foreign policy. I think that's not positive at all. I do support the use of National Guard troops to put down the riots, potential insurrections in different cities. I think that's a good move, but everything else, he talks about attacking every country in the world. Essentially, let's invade Mexico, let's bomb Mexico, let's Venezuela. I think that's a good one, but pretty much all the other ones, Iran, Yemen, let's have Ukraine bomb Moscow and try to take out more of their nuclear triad. I mean, those are really stupid and dangerous ideas. So I do have a lot of concerns with Trump. I still support him overall. He's in almost every way better than Biden, except the war in Ukraine, which he's worse. Except for but I have to praise him for he's really started a dialogue with Russian President Putin. Just that one meeting, but just the very fact that he has a diplomatic.
So from what we understand, there's a diplomatic line that's going between the two places where Biden had shut that down.
Yeah, that's very important. Even if the dialogue's happening at a sub-cabinet level with Steve Witkoff and Putin. So that's a good thing, and that mitigates the damage he's doing elsewhere with the massive long-range missile shipments and the war he's waging against Russian oil refineries, which he's coordinating with Zelensky to some degree. But it still could end in World War III with Russia.
Well, I'm not exactly sure that Biden would have handled it any better. And if we had gotten Kamala in, ooh, I mean, how much worse would we be in? All right, so I'm going to end it with that thought, where we will never know how good it would have been with Kamala Harris. Yeah, I say that very tongue in cheek, or how bad. I think it would have been we would be in a much bigger mess with Kamala Harris than we are with Donald Trump. So I'm going to end it on that note. Donald Trump, definitely very disappointed with everything that he's not doing. Very grateful for all the things that he is doing well. So David Pine, thank you so much for joining me. Can you please share with our audience how they can find out more about you and get your newsletter?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would encourage all your viewers to please go to dpyne.substack.com. Once again, dpyne.substack.com. That's the Real War Substack. It's where I post probably my bi-monthly. Sometimes I publish, I think, 9 in 1 month, but typically 2 or 3 a month. Yeah. And I make them extensive articles. Some people find that annoying because they don't want to spend the time to read them. But even if you just peruse them and kind of, I have subheadings that you can kind of find the topic you want to learn about. I think it provides a lot of important national security insights into our foreign policy that other people don't really cover. And then you can also see my daily posts on X at America First Con. Once again, at America First Con.
Well, David Pine, thank you so much for joining us. If you'll hold on for just a minute, I'm going to let the audience go. I want to just thank you off air. So, folks, this has been Talk with John here on KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. You can go to our website, which is KMMU.org. We are live on Main Street Media is live, that is, on Rumble, X, and YouTube. And please go to any one of those locations and share with a friend this great conversation that we had with David Pine. Folks, when you do that, it allows us to bring these guests on, allows them to be known a little bit more and get the information out to the public that we really